Hello everyone, and welcome to our global Nutanix User Group webinar. We're thrilled to have you here today for a sneak peek at what's new in Nutanix NCI 7.3. I'm Angelo, Community Manager here at Nutanix, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Now, before we jump into the tech magic, let's break a little ice. In the Zoom chat, tell us where you're tuning in from and what your morning go-to drink is. Coffee, tea, something fancy like turmeric latte? I'll start. I'm from Toronto and I have a strong coffee beside me. Well, almost. That's working overtime right now. So let's get some, let's see where everyone's from. Great, good to see everybody. Wow, Mumbai. Wow, great. Good stuff. Well, today's session is titled Next Level Resilience, What's New in Nutanix NCI 7.3, and we've got two awesome speakers joining us today. Jason Burns, Director of NCI Technical Marketing, and William Parks, Senior Product Marketing Manager for NCI. They'll walk us through the latest updates, including Streamlined Multicluster Management, disaster recovery enhancements, and even a little something about Nutanix Bluetooth speakers. Yep, you heard me right. You might be walking away with more than just knowledge today. So get comfy and get chatty in the Q&A, and let's dive in.
Thank you, Angelo. So, by the way, my morning drink, and I'm in the Midwest temporarily, and it's 100% humidity, is a hot coffee. It works really well for this webinar. Jason, what's your drink?
Yeah, hot coffee as well in a big Yeti tumbler.
100% humidity as well for you?
Absolutely. Here in Durham, North Carolina, it is hot.
So thank you everyone for joining. I am just going to be in the way of Jason. So I want to walk you through kind of the introductions of what NCI 7.3 is about, and he's going to deep dive into some of the, well, all of the features actually that mean anything to any of us. But I wanted to start with two things. A lot of you may be familiar with our releases in the past, and we dropped them as AOS releases, and that's still true. They are AOS releases, but we've now kind of packaged them up into what we call NCI. So moving forward, all of our releases will be NCI. And what is NCI, you may ask? Or maybe you don't care. NCI is a few things. It's AOS, obviously. It's AHV, for those that are interested. It's Flow. It's Prism Central, and LCM. So if all those words sound familiar to you, we're in a good spot. If they don't, we'll focus on AOS. But just know this is a feature-rich release, and moving forward, they will be because of all the different components we're now including in these cycles. So we always start off every session with this disclaimer. I'm gonna give everyone like 15 seconds. I'm so kidding. Just know that we're talking about stuff, and I don't know legally what that means, but you're welcome. Good morning. So, quick overview. The most challenging part about a release, and I'm sure this is with all tech companies, is how do you amplify or have the best parts of the release be amplified and talked to? Because there were so many features in this release. Jason, was it 70 something, 70 plus?
There were over 70 features in here. Yep. And
Yeah.
you asked me to narrow it down. And
Yeah.
so I picked these top 15, but it wasn't easy.
And I just want to say, he's the brains. I could be the beauty of this. I don't. I participated, Jason. I helped whittle it down. But yeah, part of the job here is trying to make it reasonable for folks like you to understand the big parts of the release. So this is the narrowed down version. Actually, at the end, we'll present kind of everything in a glance. But these are what we feel are the most important parts of the release. And we always categorize them because with every release, there's just different focuses, right? But in this one, it's all about the mobility and resilience. The networking security is always a thing, course management, and what we consider scale. But if you look, I know most of you are reading ahead of me, which is awesome because it doesn't behoove me to read each of these to you. There's quite a lot of features that were requested from possibly you in this audience, but from customers and partners specifically. One thing that we will talk to, there's a little asterisk. If you look to the far corner here, Intelligent Assist, we are naming this feature. Jason will talk to it. It is being named, and I think we have a name. And maybe I don't know, Jason, if you've heard this, but if you haven't heard it, I'll surprise you when you get to it. Is that
Okay, I'm
fair?
looking forward to it.
Oh, you haven't heard it? You
Not
haven't heard
yet.
the? Oh my gosh. Okay.
And for
So,
those in the chat, there are a lot of acronyms here, but I promise I'll expand each one of these acronyms because we'll have a slide for each one of these later on. And if I don't, you can hit me up in the Q&A.
well, I'll probably ask. Remember, I'm the slower one on this webinar. I'm just the product marketing manager. You're the technical marketing engineer. All right. With that said, so these are the 15. I think it was 15 kind of top features we thought were most appropriate to show. But we went a step further, and this was more intense and more painful than anything we've done in our marketing jobs. Is to get it down to 3. So top 3. Everyone ready? Angela, you ready back there? Here
Yes,
we go.
yes, always.
Okay. So here's the top 3. So this is where when when a customer or partner asks, one of you asks, tell me really what was this release about? We think these 3 were the most important. The independent witness, and we'll get into all this, by the way, specifics to them. The multi-cluster virtual switch management, which I think Angela mentioned already. And the big one is that multi-cluster LCM upgrades. So we'll talk to all of these, but we feel this is the focus, truly the focus for us in this release. And hopefully everyone walks away from this knowing at least these 3, right? Now, before we get started, and again, I know I'm in the way, how do I get to 7.3? We get this question all the time. If you're on anything below 6.10, get to 6.10 first. So there's an upgrade path that we talk about. A lot of folks are on a 6.x branch of AOS/NCI. You got to get to 6.10, which can get you to 7.0, which can get you to 7.3, right? So there is an upgrade path. Even if you see it in a one-click upgrade, there'll be a path to follow there. The other thing to mention, and Jason hopefully will expand on this, everything we release from this point on, remember back in the day we had STS and LTS releases, short-term and long-term support releases. Everything now, especially the 7.0 branch we introduced, is all long-term. So no more deciding whether you need to a feature or fix in an STS release and don't want to apply it because of that, and you have to wait for the LTS. None of that matters anymore. They're all LTS releases. We'll support them for a certain period of time. I think basically it's 2 years from the release. Is that correct, Jason?
That's right.
Wow. I just wanted,
And
because I didn't
2
know that.
years, 2 years from the release, and everything inside that NCI bundle, right? So the
Yeah,
AOS, AHV, Flow, LCM, that's all supported for the same term. So the term
correct.
starts at the same time for all the packages. The term goes to the same time. And the goal, right, is for those 2 releases a year to be supported for 2 years. So that makes
Correct.
life a little easier for folks doing planning.
Yeah, we'd hope it eased the pain. Not everyone likes to go through upgrade cycles, right? Part of being on the Nutanix platform is the ease or simplicity to sometimes go through an upgrade cycle, but not everyone likes to do it. So just know we are moving to, Jason said it, a twice-a-year release, and these releases are what we consider long-term releases. So let's get Jason to talk a little more. And with that, Jason, I'll move this slide forward, and it's all yours.
Perfect.
Look
Thank
at
you.
that. Boom. Yeah.
So the first big bucket of features is all about that workload mobility. So mobility and resilience are packaged together in this release. And the first feature in that is the multi-cloud snapshot technology, or MST. So multi-cloud snapshot technology got 3 big improvements in the 7.3 release. The first one is support for Azure. So now with your multi-cloud snapshots, you're able to send those to Azure Blob Storage for Pilot Light or the Zero Compute. So before it was just in Amazon AWS. Now you could also, or on-prem. Now you've got that third option to do it to Azure as well. So for those of you using Azure or looking for alternate destinations for those snapshots, I think this is a big advantage. The next is for anyone who was trying out MST in the 7.0 release, you had to do some command line steps in Prism Central. Now you can deploy this multi-cloud snapshot technology from the Prism Central NCM marketplace. So you go into the marketplace, do the deploy, do the configuration all through a GUI rather than command line. So a nice quality of life for that. And then finally, the next one is multi-site. So in the past, you weren't able to add MST as an additional site in the same recovery plan. But now, if you've already got a recovery plan to, say, a secondary site with synchronous or asynchronous, you can then add multi-cloud snapshot technology as a third site or a tertiary site. So let's say you've got, a metro availability set up to a secondary site. Now you could also take some of those snapshots and send them off to longer term storage in the cloud or in Nutanix objects for a longer term retention, where you have can keep more data at a lower snapshot or a longer snapshot interval.
Jason, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Please do.
First of all, I love the soothing sounds of your voice and how you describe this. But I wanted to point out to the audience in the top right of all these slides. So as we talk about these features, we've actually added a little legend, and it's SPU. I think everyone can see. Yeah, Jason's highlighting it. What this shows you is as we go and talk about these features, the ones we've highlighted, what are they available in? Starter, professional, or ultimate. And hopefully that helps you as customers understand. So if it's got a little amber, it's an upgrade, correct, Jason?
Yeah, the amber means like that might be an add-on.
Yeah, add-on.
And for that one, it's the multi-site portion of this, I believe, that
Yeah.
requires that that replication, advanced replication add-on. But otherwise,
Yes.
it's available in Pro with an add-on or an Ultimate.
Yep. So hopefully that helps you as customers. And this is a customer deck. Like this is what you would have in your hands. So this is all stuff that you could see and use. So anyway, sorry.
Great.
Take it
No,
away,
thank
Jason.
you. We'll see that in example in the next slide when we
Perfect.
take a look at the independent witness for AHV. So if you're using AHV Metro and you want that third party independent witness, in the past, you had to set that up on another Nutanix cluster. And that other Nutanix cluster, it had to be running AHV. So now we've actually broken the independent witness dependencies so that you can deploy that on a non-Nutanix cluster. You can even deploy it on a single node ESXi host at a third site. So this makes it very easy to deploy that witness at the third site with fewer resources. So there's no longer a need to have a cluster at that third site. We've also added some nice user interface bells and whistles. So the management, the upgrades, the monitoring of that independent witness for AHV now happens through this great user interface. And again, right, you can look at the legend here, Pro with an upgrade or Ultimate. All right. I'm excited about the independent witness one. People have been asking me for this for a while because they really want to have that third site deployed with fewer resources. The next one is available across all licenses, as you can see in the top corner here, and that's the disaster recovery mapping. We all know that folks have complex networks to start with. Before Nutanix even shows up on the scene, customers have sometimes pretty complex network deployment, multiple size subnets on each side, maybe multiple subnets on a source failing over to a single on the right or destination. And the disaster recovery planning and mapping wasn't able to account for this before. So you would either have to make multiple recovery plans, or you would have to have the customer re-IP their networks. So now what you can do is you can support complex network mapping where you have multiple destinations or multiple sources, like say subnet A and subnet C, both failing over to subnet AR here. And then you can see that these are 2/24 networks failing over to a single /20 network. So if you've got complex networks or multiple networks, you can now map them over to a different set of networks on the destination side. There's also one little caveat here. The static IP mapping that we've added does require the advanced replication license. It's not reflected in the legend up here, but we've got it down here on the slide. So this one is, I think, really helpful because folks just have really complicated networks, and now disaster recovery can account for that in the planning.
Yeah, this has been that was talked about so much. I mean, over the last few years, from a customer standpoint. So
Yeah,
it's good to see it's finally released.
when you've got to shoehorn a customer's network into the design or kind of redesign rather than just mapping it exactly as it is, that's tough. And so now we've alleviated that problem. Speaking of flexibility, we also have added a more resilient PC backup and restore with more recovery options. So what's changed here? On the continuous backup side, this is when you back up a Prism Central to another Prism element cluster, up to 3 Prism element clusters. What we've added here is that you can have an RPO of up to 30 minutes now. So it used to be 2 hours. Every 2 hours, you take a backup of that Prism Central. Now it's up to 30 minutes if you would like to configure it to do so to one of those clusters. We're also working on the NC2 on Azure portion of this to get the PC backup and restore continuous backup for Azure. And we've also added point-in-time backups. So the point-in-time backup is a configurable RPO, 1 to 24 hours, and then that point-in-time backup goes to an object store, either Nutanix Objects or AWS S3. So now you're taking your Prism Central backup, putting it somewhere entirely outside of Nutanix infrastructure if you desire, and then the continuous backup allowed you to go back to the most recent snapshot, whereas the point-in-time backup lets you scroll back through that history of snapshots. And then one of the common questions that comes up around this that I see in the chat is always about, what about recovery? Can I change the IP address? And so I see there's some comments going on in the chat. Definitely, if you can talk about those in the chat in the Q&A, we'll get you covered there.
Can I mention one thing too that's underappreciated is your agility with this marker. You're able to do underlines, you can draw arrows. I could not. So thank you for that, because it does make it easier to follow along, even
That
for
was
me.
that big mug of coffee makes that
Okay,
possible.
perfect.
This next feature is the dynamic VM placement with auto cluster selection. So auto cluster selection is really neat because it lets you pool your AHV clusters together. So if you've got a group of multiple AHV clusters, you can treat them as one big resource from Prism and then just deploy a VM. So what you see here is this auto cluster select. Instead of picking one individual AHV cluster, you can just have it pick the one based on resource utilization that makes the most sense to deploy a VM. So this is now enabled with role-based access control and V4 APIs. And also, because of the new multi-cluster virtual switch that we'll talk about later, this is available with VLAN networks because originally it was just with VPCs. The thing is, if you're going to deploy across clusters, you need resources like the network that spans clusters, and now a VLAN can do that. And this is available in Pro and Ultimate. And so my favorite feature section has just arrived, the networking and security enhancements. So sorry if I go a little bit long on this one, Bill, you'll have to keep me on track.
I was just gonna
Um,
say, I've never seen you lighten up more than we talk about network and security
this
in the
is, yeah,
NCI.
I love storage, but networking is better. Sorry, guys. So a feature that I've been waiting on for a long time is the AHV multi-cluster virtual switch, or the ability to create a network that spans multiple AHV clusters. So now I have a network that can be provisioned inside my Prism Central, and then that network could span any number of AHV clusters that are all registered to that Prism Central. So this allows me to do that auto cluster selection that I talked about. And it also is great for the flow virtual networking external subnets. So if you're using a flow virtual networking external subnet, you could have that external subnet span multiple clusters, whereas before, the external subnet was only on a single cluster. So great use cases for this are when you're doing provisioning across multiple clusters, or if you're doing that flow virtual networking. One other question that comes up a lot with this is the other benefit that I hadn't mentioned is centralized IP address management. So not only are IP addresses centrally managed, you also have MAC addresses centrally managed. So if you have multiple clusters, because they each have their own IP address management, you could have in the past run into MAC or IP conflicts, but now you'll have that centrally managed from Prism Central. So you removed that IP conflict and MAC conflict you might have had before. Now, we saw that a lot in large EUC deployments where they deploy those desktops, those end user computing desktops across different clusters, but in the same VLAN. Another feature that we've not been marketing very much, but I think is pretty exciting is the password manager. So inside of your Prism Central, in the security dashboard area, you can now go in and change all the system passwords across your Prism Central, your CVM, and in the 7.3 release, we added the password manager support for AHV. So this gives you a warning if you've left any default passwords, and it also allows you to go in and rotate or change those passwords. Also adds an API. So all these password changes are available for any third-party tools that might rotate or change passwords via API. And I don't know, I don't have a direct list, but we can work with the security team to see if there are any integrations in progress here.
So, Jason, one thing I would add is this seems like a small thing, and you're right. I've done a bad job marketing it. The point is, so many customers struggled with password maintenance, right?
Mhm.
Or even that initial password change, right? Sometimes it's forgotten, things happen.
We We've
Go ahead.
improved it over time. So if you
Yeah,
follow
correct.
the NCI release over years, way back in the day, um,
Yes.
it shipped with default passwords, but now Foundation has added the ability
Yeah,
to specify the
true.
password when you foundation the deployment. But now this adds it one step further. Not only do you have to change the password at Foundation, you can go in and for all the hosts, all the CVMs, you can change these passwords here. Yep. So what we found is that or reading any industry paper, uh,
Mhm,
default passwords or lack of password um, hygiene here is definitely a risk.
mhm.
So we want to make sure that that is taken care of.
Perfectly.
Carefully said.
I might include that in my new marketing copy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is being recorded, right?
Yes. Um, the next feature is something also that is a great function for service providers or people with network function VMs. If you need to increase network performance or decrease network latency because you have a router, a firewall, some load balancer from a partner, SRIOV or the network offload are great ways that you can either directly pass through a NIC from the AHV host up to a VM through this virtual function in SRIOV, or you can do this network offload and offload the networking fast path to the virtual function on the smart NIC. So you can get huge performance increases for UDP traffic. Also, it decreases your CPU utilization on the host. And it also decreases latency. The great part about the network offload, if you have this NVIDIA ConnectX 6 Smart NIC, the network offload still works with flow network security firewall rules. You know, the networking slow path gets uploaded or remains here in the AHV host, but the networking fast path lives down here in the smart NIC. So you can still get huge performance gains, but with network offload, you can still use those flow network security and VPCs at the same time. So this is a great feature, all supported by something called NIC profiles in Prism Central. So you'll see this when you create VMs in 7.3, and you'll see a new section for NIC profiles if you have these NVIDIA ConnectX 6 smart NICs. And then moving from the physical network side to the virtual network side, we've added a lot of BGP enhancements and routing enhancements for people using Flow virtual networking. So we have route filtering, which allows you to, on every BGP session to the customer's BGP infrastructure, filter which routes you advertise. This is great if you want to have some sessions advertise some routes and other sessions advertise a different set or fewer routes. Next is BGP communities. The customer network infrastructure can sometimes use a community to take routing decisions. And so we can then send these communities up to the customer infrastructure. So really it's just adding an extra bit of info that we send to the customer routing infrastructure. And then finally, AS path prepending. This one is fantastic for disaster recovery. So in AS path prepending, it makes the network path longer by adding the AS one more time. So in this case, the orange path is longer and less preferred, and the purple path is shorter and preferred. So you could have this one be your active site and this one be your backup site, for example. And then if the active site went down, the backup site would immediately be there for routes. So you wouldn't, you'd have a very fast failover of networks in that case. So fantastic for using BGP and the disaster recovery scenario. And then finally, Flow Network Security gets a lot of enhancements for the 7.3 release. Too many to cover individually, so we'll just summarize here. So the first thing that we added is entity groups. This allows you to, instead of just specifying a secured entity by a VM category, you can group them based on subnet categories and VPC categories and still VM categories. And this is what allows us to do the VNIC specific policies. So you could have a VM category and a subnet category, creating an entity group, and that would allow you to say, hey, put the production policy on the production NIC for this VM, and put the backup policy on the backup NIC for this VM. So finally, through entity groups and VNIC specific policies, you're able to differentiate between two different NICs in the same VM with a network security policy. So this feature is pretty powerful, and it's going to be the future of how I see network security policies being written. In addition, we've added the global policy scope. So this allows you to protect VMs across VLANs and VPCs with the same policy. We've also allowed you to do intra-tier customization. So in the past, if you had a secured entity, you could either allow all traffic within it or block all traffic within it. But now, if you have a secured entity, you can have a list of specifically allowed ports, multiple, within that group. So if you make a web server group, you could say, hey, allow the web servers to communicate with each other over these 3 ports. So this is a huge advantage in flexibility in the policy. And then finally, shared services policies allow us to have a policy that's evaluated first in the priority order for those global policy types like Active Directory and DNS. We've also added service insertion. So this one is huge for those network function partners. So now we also have a GUI to redirect that traffic to a service insertion VM on one of the hosts. We've added NSX to flow migration in the move tool. So you can migrate NSX policies to flow. And closed a small gap with single Prism Central cross-cluster live migration support. A lot of acronyms on that one. So if you have 2 clusters in the same Prism Central and the VMs are protected with flow, now you can migrate the VM across those clusters and keep the flow policy on the VM. And we've got some members of the product team here. If you're interested in securing your Kubernetes applications and your virtual machines with flow network security at the same time, reach out in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can get you invited to a early access support for flow network security across containers and VMs. So this is some exciting stuff we're doing to make Kubernetes security and VM security all managed from flow. So I am really excited about that process.
So speaking of flow, Jason, I want to
Yeah,
interrupt yours.
please.
I think we have a survey. Just to break this up a little bit, I think we have a survey. Can we launch that now, or should we do we wait? I don't know how this works.
Um, let's wait until we get to our more slide,
Oh,
if we can, because
I wanted to.
I've got some questions in there about what the favorite features are. But how about this?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, let's hold off just till we get to that summary.
Okay. Fine. Hey, you're welcome, everyone. We're pushing it out to the end.
Exactly. So management and scale are also pretty big areas for the 7.3 release. This is probably one of the things that makes my life easiest as an administrator of a lab cluster, is that I can now upgrade everything from Prism Central. So if you've got multiple Nutanix clusters, all these components just about can be upgraded from Prism Central now. So you can manage your AOS, AHV, firmware, all those components get upgraded from Prism Central. Yeah, no more do you have to connect to clusters individually and do this work. So it saves a lot of time as an administrator. I see a lot of people out there are happy with that, so that's good to hear. Now, the next feature is something I think that gives Nutanix some of its competitive advantage back. So we've done a lot of work to support denser nodes with lower recovery point. Now, in the beginning of the section, you saw me call this out as 185 terabyte with 1 hour RPO. And so what this does is in the 7.3 release, you can support nodes up to 185 terabytes with 1 hour RPO. In the past, that node could only have 92 terabytes. So, we've more than doubled the size of the node for that 1 hour RPO. And as the product team pointed out, not only is that for 1 hour RPO, but that is all the way down to sync rep here as well. So that's a pretty big improvement, getting you more storage density at a low RPO. Why is that so important? In the past, you might have had to deploy double the number of Nutanix nodes, to get this same RPO and density. So if you can do that with fewer nodes, that has a clear advantage. Right now, this is greenfield only for 7.3, but we expect a future release should allow this for brownfield deployments of all flash deployed at that size. And if you wanted the full 370 terabyte deployment capability for the 24-hour, you do have to at least do the cluster install with 185 terabytes at the time of cluster install. And you could come back and add more drives to get you up to the 370 terabyte later, but you've got to start with at least 185. I know some customers will partially populate nodes and then add as they grow. Next one is less about density and more about time. So if you have a VM template, the first VM made from that template had to be copied from Prism Central or copied from the cluster where that template lived. Now what you do is when you make a VM template, you're going to have a policy that allows you to place the VM exactly on the clusters where it will be used. So in this case, let's say you have some end user computing deployments, some desktops, and this template is your gold image, and it needs to be put on every cluster that's labeled production. So now you'll update your template. It will be pushed to all the clusters where it needs to be. And then that first VM creation from the template will be instantaneous for you. So you're not waiting on that time for the transfer. It happens as soon as the administrator makes the template update. So a nice quality of life improvement and speed improvement for the AHV VM templates. And then this next one is a management and scale capability. So if you have multiple Nutanix clusters, maybe you have Edge or Robo, or you just have a very large deployment, you might have many Prism Centrals managing these. So now what we've done is we've made it possible to deploy your Prism Centrals on the same Nutanix management cluster. So you can go in from the Prism Element GUI, no more CLI, no more workarounds. You can do this from the Prism Element GUI and deploy each of your Prism Centrals on that big management cluster. For those of you who've had to do this in the past, the process wasn't always as seamless. And this is a nice, judging by the chat, there's some folks out there who like this one as well. All right, let me clear my. And then finally here, Intelligent Assist. So
I do have to interrupt. I do
please
have to
do.
interrupt. It has a name. It has a name. I think it's NEVA. I'm not going to give you it's an acronym. NEVA. There you go, everyone.
Okay.
You heard it here first.
Okay, awesome. So what's the purpose of this feature that we've developed, right? What you're going to see is inside of your Prism Central, you're going to see a small star down here in the bottom right corner of your 7.3 Prism Central. And the whole purpose is to help you out with learning about the features that you may already have, but may not be taking advantage of. So for example, we know that with NCM blueprints, multi-VM operations can be a lot faster. So if we notice that you're in the VM creation page or you're managing lots of VMs manually, the Intelligent Assist will suggest the right NCM blueprint and some directions to those instructions and potentially a test drive to demo out that feature to take advantage of features that you may already be licensed for. And so the goal here, right, is to make your life as the administrator a little bit easier just by pointing to some things that could save you time, save your resources. And more, right? So here we are, we're at the point of we couldn't fit them all in. But at this point, we can launch the poll. So we'll go through that and launch our poll. We've got a couple questions to ask you here about what is maybe your favorite feature now that we've covered most of the big ones. And I know some folks in chat were happy to share, so hopefully you can do that. And we've also got some questions about features that you'd like to see or features that you'd like to use.
Oh, we have a few questions. Wow, there's more questions than I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
Enjoy, everyone.
While we've got people together, we want to find out what they're thinking.
Yeah. So one thing we should mention, Jason, is there was a release that occurred in parallel or around the same time as 7.3, which is the cloud native AOS. Is there anything we could say briefly to folks that may be interested or even care what that is? Because it's a big deal for us.
Yeah, so right for cloud native AOS, if you have those right now EKS only, so Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Services is a container-based storage system for your persistent storage needs. So if you've got a cloud native deployment in Amazon EKS right now, you'll be able to have persistent storage with all the things you love about AOS. So that means you've got an app that needs persistent storage. You can store it in that AOS layer and then get access with NDK to features like disaster recovery and replication. Because one of the things of having persistent data is making sure that now that data is backed up, that that's replicated. And that's an area where AOS excels already in the on-prem and the cloud cluster space. But now with this cloud native AOS GA, also in the cloud native Kubernetes based space as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, for the essence of time, there are a few things notable in here. I'll throw out a couple. Jason, you can expand on it while we're doing this poll, but everyone sees that top one, the top left, NVMe over TCP sneaking in. Importantly, and I saw this in the chat as well, is the V4 API updates. A lot of folks have really embraced the API, the V4 APIs available on the platform. So that expansion is good news. But what's your thoughts here? What's another one or two before we get to
Yeah, you
questions?
see the industry moving to like NVMe over TCP. So that
Hmm.
is an interesting one from my perspective to see these clients, instead of using SCSI connections, using
Hmm.
NVMe over TCP. Absolutely. The V4 APIs, we have more and more of those APIs available every release. And then some other nice things that happened were the scale of protection policies, right? So now that 10,000 VM scale of protection policies, and then increased NGT scale. A couple of those out there might have been using Red Hat clustering. So now we have that Red Hat Stone support in AHV, as well as supporting like some truly massive virtual machine sizes as hardware increases. A small one, but important, is IPv6 support for those unmanaged VLANs. So now we support discovery of IPv6 addresses. Some overlapping ERPs are, what are those? Externally routable prefixes. I promised I would define my acronyms
Yes, thank you.
across virtual private clouds. So this is for folks who have multiple overlapping networks between different tenants. Here's one we haven't really talked about. The Prism Central version itself is changing. So you might have been used to like a 2023 dot or a 2024 dot Prism Central. Well, now, since it's part of the NCI release, Prism is also going to be numbered 7.3. And so that's how you know if you go with the 7.3 release, you'll have AOS 7.3, Prism 7.3, and in the future, you'll see more components go this direction. And then just a ton of improvements in the NC2 side, really specifically around networking and external storage as well, is how I'd summarize all those.
The one last thing I would add is if you're really curious what everything was available in 7.3, I see some questions in chat. Release notes in the portal. We can't cover everything. We think we focused on the high level stuff, the stuff that we thought was most important. But yeah, the release notes are gonna have everything listed.
Absolutely. Yep. If you go to the download page for 7.3 AOS or Prism Central 7.3, you should find each of these features covered in the release notes there.
Yep.
So you might have to go through today. You might have to go through Prism, AOS, AHV, and
Correct.
Flow. Those 4 sets of release notes to get what we've covered here.
With that, I mean, Jason, I'm so honored to be able to share these moments. Oh, look at this, it came in. I want to say one thing. You're like the NCI whisperer. I learned something. I learned something that I put together from you every time we do webinars. So thank you.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, happy to hear it.
Great.
Okay. Do you want to go through these answers? Who's going to do them? Angelo? Back to you.
Great.
Maybe I could just cover some of the questions and what I see that is the most favorite feature of everybody is the multi-cluster upgrade with LCM. That seems like a good one. And then this audience also looks like 62% of you upgrade every release. So thank you guys. I look at the internal metrics for who's upgrading, so now I know that you guys are the ones driving that fast adoption. So thanks for joining and upgrading. And a lot of folks interested in the container and VM-based network security. Those are the big standouts for me in the poll. So thank you guys for all your feedback.
Great. What a session. Great. Big thanks to Jason and William for unpacking all the great features in NCI 7.3, from networking and security management to disaster recovery. This release really brings the resilience. Remember, this is all part of our journey to help you simplify, scale, and secure your cloud operations. Before you head out, make sure to fill out the giveaway form if you opted in for those Nutanix Bluetooth speakers. They're waiting for 2 lucky winners. Follow up with us if you have questions. We'll share some links after the webinar. And keep an eye out for upcoming user group events in your region. And just a quick plug for the Nutanix online community, next.nutanix.com. Lots of resources on that site for you to use. So from all of us here at Nutanix, thank you for being part of the community. And remember, I always use this when I sign off my podcasts. Stay curious, stay connected, and keep building the future with Nutanix. Thanks, everyone.